Curious George discovers the seasons. Adaptation by Cynthia Platt based on the TV series Teleplay written by Joe Fallon. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. Do you want to hear about the time George's curiosity helped him learn all about the seasons? It all started on a cold winter day. The leaves were gone and the grass was brown, but there wasn't a snowflake in sight. George had to bundle up in his winter coat, but when he got outside, he wasn't sure what to do. There were no fallen leaves to play in, there were no birds to watch, and George had toys for warm days and toys for snowy days, but nothing for plain, just cold days. George had an idea. He would visit the bunnies. But when he went the next door, the bunnies weren't in their hutch. He found his friend Bill and the bunnies inside. "I'm going to bring them to my grandmother's house for the winter, George," Bill told him. "It's just too cold here to keep the bunnies outside in their house." George was disappointed to see the bunnies go. Then Bill asked him to do a special job. "While I'm away, will you feed Jumpy Squirrel for me?" he asked. "There aren't a lot of nuts and seeds around in the winter, so it's an important job." George was happy to help. Did you know animals deal with changes of seasons differently than people do? Some animals hibernate, stay in one place, and save energy all winter with slower breathing and heart rates. Some animals, including monarch butterflies, migrate from place to place during different seasons of the year. George fed Jumpy, but that took only a minute. He wasn't sure what to do after that. He looked around his yard and thought about summer. He missed his pool and blowing bubbles. Everything fun seemed to happen in the spring, summer, or fall. Did you know the Earth is divided into two parts called hemispheres? When it's winter in the northern hemisphere, it's summer in the southern hemisphere. It takes the Earth a whole year to rotate around the sun and for all 4 seasons to occur. George decided he wasn't going to let winter ruin his fun. It might not actually be summer, but he could still do summertime things. George got the hose and filled his little pool with water, but when he jumped in, the water was so cold. George got cold too. Brr. He ran into the house. "Soak your feet in warm water, get rid of the chill," the man with the yellow hat said. The warm bath was a lot nicer than the cold pool. George felt better. Did you know large bodies of water take longer to heat up and cool down than air does? This is why even though the air temperature in the summer can get very hot, the water in a big lake or ocean is still nice and cool. The next day, it was even colder. George bundled up into his coat and scarf when he went out to play. He wanted to enjoy being outside in the winter as much as he could in the other seasons. He sat by the pool to relax. Do you know there's an imaginary line around the middle of the planet? It's called the equator. Temperatures can change a lot in the northern and southern hemispheres. It's almost always warm at the equator because it stays close to the sun even as the Earth rotates. Then George blew up some bubbles for Jumpy. But when Jumpy tried to pop a bubble, they discovered that it had frozen. Bubbles could freeze? George felt like he was freezing too. Did you know water can take the form of a solid, liquid, or gas? Water is a solid that turns into solid ice when the temperature drops below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Water begins to boil and turn into water vapor, a gas, when it's heated to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. George went inside to warm up and drink some hot cocoa. He was puzzled. How could a monkey have any fun outside when everything kept freezing? Suddenly, George had an idea. He could use frozen things to make a game. He filled a balloon and several cartons from the recycling bin with water. Then he brought them outside so they could freeze in the cold air. George didn't notice when Jumpy accidentally spilled some seeds and nuts into the cartons of water. The next morning, it was the coldest day yet. George had to wear a hat, scarf, and coat to stay warm. He didn't mind, though. He went to check on the balloon and cartons of water he'd left out the night before. They were frozen solid. George couldn't wait to set them up for the game of icy winter bowling. When he took the ice from the cartons, he saw some of Jumpy's seeds and nuts frozen inside each block. Oh, well, George tried to bowl anyways. Jumpy chased the blocks and tried to break his breakfast out of the ice. It wasn't ice bowling, but it was fun. Besides, George knew he could try his new bowling invention again the next day. He filled up the cartons and balloon with water once more and left them outside. In the morning, George bundled up. "You're not going to need that hat and scarf today, George," his friend said. George went outside. It felt more like spring or fall than winter. George checked on his cartons and balloon, hoping for another round of ice bowling. But the water hadn't turned to ice. It was too warm for it to freeze. The weather was very confusing. Wasn't it supposed to be cold in the winter and warmer in the other seasons? George went back into the house. Do you know that climate and weather are two different things? Climate means that you can expect the whole season on average, a warm summer, a cold winter. But weather is about the day-to-day changes in wind, sunlight, clouds, and storms. You could have a warm, sunny winter day and a cool, gray summer day. But later that day, something amazing happened. George thought he saw something outside his window. When he went to look, it was snowing. Did you know snow is a form of precipitation, just like rain is? Other forms like hail and sleet look like frozen rain. Some places in the world have entire seasons with almost no precipitation, and other seasons when it rains or snows almost all the time. George thought that it was cold enough to snow. It might be cold enough for water to freeze again, and cold enough to make a new ice bowling set. Maybe the cold could be fun after all. George realized that winter, spring, summer, and fall were all great in their own way. Right now, he had winter toys to play with and a whole chilly season to enjoy. The end.